All right, let's get to one that I feel like we're not on the same page on. So this is
No, we're
fun.
not.
We had a
Yeah.
great conversation this morning. I should have saved it for the podcast. All right, could USL's D1 league be a threat to MLS? So if people don't remember, there was USL came out. Paul McDonough, who used to run Miami and other teams in MLS, is now like the CEO or whatever of USL, and he wants to create a new League One that would be the top flight, that would be a D1 league like MLS. And they're working with US Soccer to do so. And we have some quotes here. One of them says, I don't think we should see a new league as a threat. If you are the big player in a market, you better react in such moments with confidence. I always say more competition is welcome. I like this guy's answer too. I like that guy. I feel like whoever this
It was
is
Jordan. Yeah, it was Jordan they interviewed.
I'm like, hey, if you're exactly right. You as MLS cannot act like this is a threat. You just have to, the more you protest or think that it's a threat and you let people think that, I think it shows weakness. Show it as confidence. You already have the upper leg. You've been a D1 league for 30 years. Like, it's okay. It's okay. So this CSO was really pissed off. It's stupid. Just effing stop. You have an established league that's beginning to thrive, and like, who are you?
I just picture this guy in a room with like three other like CSOs and this writer, and like it's not even the writer that wrote this. It's just the guy that was positioned like an intern. Like, dude, go ask these guys these questions, and he's just like, "What did I do? I didn't do this. Like, what?"
Yeah, who are you? Uh, Added another zero threat, no chance. A few other GMs offered more measure takes, and this is where I kind of probably land on it, right? Um, I'll land on it on not what this next guy says, but what the guy after that says. So this guy says, my stance on USL is I don't think they're ever going to be a threat, but I hope they can be the best league possible. It's great that they're being ambitious. If MLS wants to be ambitious, why wouldn't USL? Every country with great domestic soccer leagues has a strong second and third division. We need to create more avenues and pathways so it's positive, particularly for the American player. I hope we can all move past MLS and USL being competitors. Both leagues are trying to do their best to improve the sport. That's how fans can look at the two different leagues. I think I really like what he said as well. Like, for the American player, this is big. MLS is going to keep drawing these big stars, and we need players like, let's say, Dax McCarty, Sasha Kleshton, that maybe well, Kleshton did play overseas, but like a Dax McCarty who is an MLS lifer. If they eventually get wiped out by MLS, they need somewhere to play. This other guy says it will be kind of like the Premier League and the Championship in England, where the money in the Premier League just got to a point where you still have Englishmen penetrating into the Premier League, and especially in the bottom half of the Premier League, but a lot of players are making their names in the Championship and then going abroad. I think that is what's going to happen to USL. Another person saw it as a bigger threat to MLS Next Pro than to MLS. It's pitching the American people the culture of promotion relegation, which is not easy. I think medium to long term, it will be an attractive competition. I think it'll make the life of MLS Next Pro even more difficult. I always thought Next Pro was coming to try to kill USL, and I think USL is fighting back. I think they are going to still be more relevant than MLS Next Pro, and that they're going to have more independent clubs going to USL versus MLS Next Pro. Another exec said, it's not a threat to MLS. Now I think it's an interesting model for them. And I think the grab for them is a lot of these markets surrounding big market MLS teams. I think on a local level, it's exciting for their league, but I can't see them ever getting a market share of the big soccer markets and MLS that are already established. All right, so let's talk about this one. Because I think where I land is, and I've seen some people question as well, of how can a D3 league like MLS Next Pro be a threat to a D1 league in the USL? Or how can a USL D1 be a threat to a tier 3 MLS Next Pro? And I think the answer to that is MLS Next Pro doesn't know what it wants to be. It wants to be both an academy, almost like the minor league baseball system, but it also wants independent teams in their league as well. If you are in an independent club and you are an owner starting an independent club, and there is, let's say, a D3 option of MLS Next Pro, and you know you're probably stuck there. I don't know if you're ever going to MLS. MLS is already at 30 teams. How high can they go? 32? I doubt you're getting the 32nd spot. Or now that there's USL and they're looking at Pro Rel, can you buy into a D3 or D2 over there and promote yourself to the top flight over there? And then you also can control everything. It's still your club, it's not single entity. So for some people, that might work for them better. So, in my opinion, there you're going to have more of those independent clubs going to USL instead of MLS Next Pro. And then you end up having MLS Next Pro have to get rid of those independent clubs and just become academy teams, essentially, which is what they already are. So I can see it's a threat that way. Not like I think the USL level will be higher than MLS Next Pro on the field. It already is. But when you're talking about how can it be a threat, the threat is we're taking independent clubs away from MLS Next Pro and we're using them and we're competing against MLS in those markets. That's where I think it can really affect MLS. This thing is not going to kick off as a D1 league and immediately challenge MLS as a D1 league. That's just not going to happen because of the pockets and because of the 30-year history for MLS at this point. But yeah, I guess give me your thoughts, Logan.
Yeah, so I mean, my thing is, and I said this today in our text thread, like I just don't see in the United States, or I was about to say USA, but I'll just call it United States. Um, the United States, I just don't feel like they can buy into this idea of a second professional league operating alongside with another upper tier, first tier Division 1 professional league. Like I don't think two can coincide and coexist. And like I've never felt that can work. They've tried it with our most popular sport here in the United States, and it just absolutely crumbles.
Talk
Like
about like
every time,
XFL or
yeah, AFL,
UFL,
XFL,
all them.
UFL, yeah. So that's my biggest thing is like I don't think USL could ever challenge them because they'll never get the TV deal that you would need to supplant MLS. And I'm not sure their goal is to mash up MLS. I think it's to kind of coexist and maybe kind of be like that championship level, Premier League championship kind of comparison. But I just don't feel like there's enough money in it for a lot of these places because I feel like we're always jumping on here and in 3 years, half of these USL teams will be gone. Like I just feel like there's never been any kind of investment in it. There's never going to be investment in them if it's going to be between them and an MLS team. People are going to lean into the MLS teams. They're never going to lean into the USL teams because they're just not in a lot of popular areas. And I don't feel like while there is some following of the USL, I just don't feel like it. Like Jordan, I can jump on our soccer feed, and I would say that we have a soccer heavy following, and probably people that listen to this. And while they might support that team, it might be a fun game to go to on a Friday night because they don't live close enough to one of the MLS teams. They're not picking one of these games on a Saturday night to watch over the MLS team. Like I just don't feel like that's going to happen. And that ultimately is the nail in the coffin. If Miami FC is playing and Inter Miami's playing, and they're both on Saturday night, there's no chance that people are watching Miami FC. Like no chance. And if that's going to happen to their TV deals, Paramount's not going to buy them. They're like, why would I buy that? Nobody's going to watch it. The only one I think that could afford to do it because they do it with other sports is ESPN, but ESPN's on a rocky path. Like I'm not sure that is necessarily where the streaming would go to. Could they maybe deal and partner up with MLS? That's their only way I think of existing beside MLS is not against
Are you
them
talking
or
about
as
like a future merger or
yeah,
something
like
like
I think
that?
a future merger could be more ideal for USL, which that I could see. Like give Kentucky their team, right? Like Phoenix, like there's a lot of teams, Pittsburgh, Rhode Island, like there's a lot of teams that I think could exist in MLS. I think that's where that's going to go, but I just don't see any league in the USA because of how greedy the owners are. I don't see them allowing another top flight professional league to exist. And people will say, well, there's American ownership in the Premier League, but they can't disrupt it. And you did see them try to disrupt it, and you saw what happened. I just don't think it's going to happen. Like I don't feel like the US system is built for pro rel. If it was introduced here first, absolutely. But because it wasn't, Jordan, I don't think it can exist or anything like it. They would never let another league be kind of similar to theirs in the United States. Like Kraft would never let this happen, right? Like I
But
just feel like
what could he do to stop it though? That's my thing, because
well, the
U.S.
thing they
Soccer is allowing them to pursue this.
right.
So
And US soccer can't allow them to do it, but you can also have the crafts and a bunch of these NFL owners go to a network like CBS and go, hey, listen here, we'll make sure that the NFL goes somewhere else if you continue to do this with the soccer clubs. Like, there's just so much that they
I just
have power over. I
I
don't
I
see why they would ever let another league like this exist because it would just mean money out of their pockets.
I see what you mean, but I can't see with how much the NFL rights are that like Kraft could seriously, or the other owners that have it could seriously put that pressure on them, because at the end of the day they just care about the money. So the fact is, like, they make more money off of the NFL as it is already than any of the soccer stuff. So I don't think that they'll be too concerned about it. Um, I think I could see a possible merger later on, or something, if this continues to go this way. But I I have hope that this can actually happen and work, and it can give people two different options. And one of the ways that, like, you talked about how they're not going to get as big of a TV deal as MLS, I think you're right. But let's not forget, MLS is on Apple right now, and that's locked behind a paywall most of the time. Right now, USL is on CBS, ESPN Plus, and like Paramount Plus, and they have the free Golazo channel, which plays their games sometimes for free. And some of those games are going to be broadcast over the air on CBS antenna. So you will have people that do not have, and I'm talking about more of the older people, that is hard to get into MLS because they don't even know how to work their clicker and can't get onto Apple. But you will have people that are, or cutting cable, and that they have an antenna in their house. I know younger people that have antennas in their house because they cut cable. And with the rising cost of all these streaming services have been astronomical, where they're like, you know what, I'll just watch over the air on CBS and watch Miami FC versus whatever. So it depends. I really, it's all going to depend on how they launch with this D1 league and what teams are involved. They do have some heavy markets that they can put into this league, and I think um, USL right now has very good fan bases when it comes to their markets. MLS Next Pro, I don't see that. Anytime I turn on an MLS Next Pro game, I see it look decimated, like Thanos just snapped, or worse. Like, it is barely anybody there. And I think the issue with that is that people don't really care about the 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 academies, because a lot of those players don't even make it in. It's not like baseball where you're building your whole future around the people that are going to come up through your system and be your top prospects. That doesn't really exist. Like, we have Kevin Sullivan, who's supposed to be this next big deal, and people barely show up to the Philadelphia Union too. Um, and I'd say even if you had like 11 Kevin Sullivans on the pitch for MLS Next Pro, you're probably not getting still a big turnout. And I think another thing that probably needs to be worked out with MLS Next Pro is the games are like Sunday, like right after the like. Are you going to? I don't know how else you could do this, but are you going to the stadium on Saturday, see your local team, back home, and then the next day going up there in the afternoon to watch the second team. I know people that do that, but to me that's exhausting. That is like,
And that's something too. I think like what made sense to me is like they all have these practice fields, right? Why don't they send, like a lot of stadiums do. I'm not saying that's all of them do because all of them don't, but like some of them have like practice facilities. There's got to be a better way to like implement that, but a lot of that's going to have to do with like usage of that field. Because I know like for instance, these football fields, like if you play in the football stadiums, they've got practice fields. Why not put the academy players on those pitches which they're using anyway during training? Why not put them on a stadium ground and have them play before the big team plays? That'd be kind of cool. Like if you showed up at 1 o'clock and Philadelphia Union 2 are playing and you know they can't
yeah.
do it on that stadium, and of course there's going to be limitations because some of those places do not have a practice field, but I would say most of them do, or at least somewhere in the vicinity where play them
Well,
before the game and let people have the opportunity to go to both.
I think MLS Next Pro needs to, instead of being just, if you're going to have the second teams and stuff, remove them from being called two, put them in a nearby other market that can get behind the team, give them their own identity. Because that's why USL is going to trump MLS Next Pro, is because like the fans that go see Detroit City FC, it's
Don't have a
their
team.
club.
Yeah.
It's their club. If you end up having them called like, I don't know, if you're Philadelphia 2, you're like, well, I already watched Philadelphia 1. Why am I going to watch Philadelphia 2? Philadelphia 1's my team. This is a feeder team. But like minor league baseball, take the page from them where they're in little markets around their teams in other markets and have their own identity that people can just like the team and
That's a
still
good
go
point.
see people. But then like it might create more of a more organized approach to it. So that way, let's say Philadelphia won at one in a market closer to Lancaster or something, right? Or they wanted one down in Maryland to try to grow their fan base in Maryland as the Philadelphia Union. So they put in like a team in northern Maryland somewhere that has Maryland's not a great choice actually because they have like we don't have a lot of big. Oh, but okay, Wilmington. They put a team in Wilmington, Delaware. Let's do that. That's close to Philly for people to still come down. But also, Wilmington then has a soccer team. They would be maybe more interested to check it out. It would not be called Philadelphia 2, it'd be Wilmington something. Unfortunately, probably FC. And then you would have from there, people then they'll be like, oh, the parent club is Philly. Maybe we'll go up to Philly and catch a game sometime. Like, there has to be ways to do it that way for MLS Next Pro, I think. But I don't
And
know.
and it would depend on the people in the USL. And I know a lot of the friction's been created because the US Open Cup. But like I could see a time coming where, like you said, MLS Next Pro, which I think is an awful idea. Like, don't get me wrong, like I'm not backing it, MLS Next Pro. I just don't feel like either of them are good, you know, content that other people could buy into outside of their smaller markets. But I could see Jordan in a world where MLS could approach USL and say, okay, here's what we have. Here's our plan. We're going to invest money in you as well because that will help everybody, right? That's what we've always talked about. If MLS would just invest in other places other than themselves, I'm even talking about the Apple deal. I think there needs to be investment in other avenues for people to watch games. But like I feel like if MLS came to them and said, we're going to invest in you, we're going to put you on whatever it might be, Paramount. We'll deal with Paramount. Like we'll make a deal with Paramount. We'll have some MLS games there too. Like so that way you can kind of get like but ultimately give them to those other clubs for streaming options like ESPN, and then approach them like you said. Approach them with this idea of where in the United States would you like another club? Because what is there 20 something clubs in USL? Each MLS team needs a feeder club, but it would be like Atlanta United, you're now partnered with Charlotte, North Carolina, or whatever it might be.
They did
Like,
that before in the past, and
right.
it worked for a bit. But then what MLS did, MLS got a little greedy,
Yeah, they
and
would.
started going into their markets that
Yeah,
they had those teams and
right.
putting
But
their own team there, or like Atlanta United took over where Atlanta Switch Silverbacks were. And
yeah,
then they also started stealing those clubs like
yeah.
Seattle, Portland.
But I still feel like you could pitch that idea back to them and say, we
Yeah.
will sign an agreement that says we will not encroach on some of these markets that, let's be honest, if MLS goes into those markets, we'd lose money. But I do feel like you have a fan base here. Let's infiltrate that like a Delaware. Like MLS is never going to go into Delaware, but you got a good fan base there.
Yeah.
Let's invest in that. Now, you would have clubs like a Phoenix where I think there could be a team where MLS goes, "Ooh, that's a good idea." You would have some of that where you, but I think MLS would have to then decide, hey, these are going to be expansion cities, so we're going to knock these teams either down or out, which would suck, and it'd get rid of that. But I just feel like it's going to happen to USL like it has with NISA, as it has with these other leagues in the United States. Once MLS becomes too big, they'll start squashing people, whether they mean to or not.